Hearsay doesn't come in unless you can find an exception. Why? Because hearsay typically is inadmissible because it can't be believed. It's something that somebody said out of court that we can't necessarily test its validity today in court. But there are hundreds, no, there aren't hundreds, there are dozens of exceptions that allow hearsay in. If you find one, then it comes in for its truth. If you don't, then it doesn't come in for its truth. Maybe you can use it for some limited purpose, like impeachment, or as we saw in an earlier segment, maybe effect on the listener. But in order to bring it in for its truth, hearsay needs an exception. And oftentimes the exceptions can be tricky. 8031, present sense impression, versus 8032, excited utterance, provides us one of those tricky situations. Let me try to give you an example. When I'm standing in class, oftentimes I will see somebody doing something. Usually they're coming in from, maybe going to the restroom or getting a drink, and they're like, okay, he's walking in, he's now sitting down, he's opening up his laptop again, okay, he's now looking at me and he's smiling, a little embarrassed because he knows I'm talking about him and everybody's now looking. I'm describing what my senses are experiencing, right? I'm saying real time what I'm looking at. That is a present sense impression. Or if I'm walking in from outside and I say, boy, it's really cold out there, I am immediately describing what I just perceived. That also is going to be a present sense impression. But I can't say, man, it was so cold yesterday. Even though I experienced it yesterday, the problem is time has passed. And you've heard me say this before, you'll hear me say it now, and you'll hear me say it again. Let it sink in. Conscious fabrication is what we're concerned with. The more time that transpires, the more likely somebody is to craft or change the narrative, change their testimony to appease the person who is asking them questions, or to avoid a confrontation with somebody who is cross-examining them. The more time you have to think up a lie, or the more time that goes by between when it happened and when you're talking about it, it likely has changed. So to avoid conscious fabrication, we don't allow hearsay in unless it fits within an exception. Certainly there's no conscious fabrication when you're saying something as you're experiencing it. There's no filter there. But present sense impression is really an unexcited utterance. Excited utterance, on the other hand, is just that. There's a startling event that surprises us, that there's some excitement that forces a statement from us. Now, the window of time after which you observed or experienced and spoke with present sense impression is very short, immediately or shortly thereafter. Whereas with an excited utterance, that window was open for a little bit longer. That window was open for a longer period of time because of the stress of excitement. So the more startling event is, the more or the longer that window is going to be open. So there are chronicled cases about maybe a person who has been beaten or assaulted, even 30 or 45 minutes after the 911 call of I need assistance, I need emergency. Somebody could still say to the cops, my neighbor punched me in the face, or somebody did this bad thing to me, because in their mind, time hasn't moved. It stood still. They're still under the stress or excitement of that startling event. So really, you want to look at the timing and you will look at the event itself. That's a big distinction. And that's really the way to tell the difference between a present sense impression under 8031 and an excited utterance under 8032. Always be looking at the timing and what the event was. Startling event, we now should be thinking excited utterance, and that window is open for a little bit longer. Whereas with present sense impression, I need it to be immediate, and it doesn't have to be anything startling. It's just what you are experiencing currently or just perceived. Keep that distinction in mind, and you'll do well on hearsay.